It happens on a Tuesday, or maybe a Thursday. The day itself is ordinary. Fluorescent lights, a half-eaten lunch at your desk, the low background hum of an open office. Your manager asks you to step into the conference room, and something in their body language, a slight looseness in the shoulders, tells you this isn't a performance review in the traditional sense. They close the door. They say your name. They tell you that the company values you, that your contributions have been recognized, and then they slide a piece of paper across the table with a number on it. And the number is bigger than the one before. For a moment, you don't move. You do the math in your head. Monthly. Annually. You think about what this means in the most immediate, tactile sense. The dinner you'll have tonight, what you'll say to your partner, how it will feel to finally exhale. You shake hands. You walk back to your desk, and somewhere deep in your brain, a reward circuit fires that is as old as the species itself. You have been selected. You have been validated. You are more. That feeling is real. Dismiss it, and you miss the point entirely. The raise did happen. The number did change. Something was genuinely earned, but something else also started that day. Something slower. Something that doesn't announce itself. And by the time most people notice it, the window to act differently has mostly closed. The dinner that night is nicer than usual. That's how it begins. Not with recklessness, but with what seems like proportion. You earned more, so you spend more. It feels correct. It feels almost logical. The restaurant is $20 more expensive per person, but so what? The category of the splurge isn't even registered as a splurge. It's a celebration. It's appropriate, and it is appropriate once. But the mind doesn't file it as an exception. It files it as a reference point. The new floor. The baseline from which future decisions are made. Over the next few months, the changes are small and individually defensible. The apartment lease comes up for renewal, and instead of staying, you move somewhere with a second bedroom, a nicer kitchen, a neighborhood with better coffee shops. The monthly rent difference is maybe $400. Not nothing, but spread across 30 days, it seems almost negligible. And besides, you can afford it now. That's the whole point of earning more, isn't it? The car follows a similar logic. Not immediately. Maybe a year in. The old one had 160,000 miles and a heater that worked only when it wanted to. The new one is leased. The payment is $340 a month. It smells like possibility. The subscriptions compound quietly. A better streaming tier here, a wine club there. A fitness app that costs $18 a month and gets used inconsistently, but provides tremendous comfort simply by existing on the phone. Each one, individually, costs less than a dinner out. Together, they're a dinner out. Every week. The social circle subtly reshapes, not through any deliberate choice, but through proximity and habit. You are spending time in different rooms, different restaurants, different conversations. The people around you, the ones you see on weekends and talk to about life, are operating at a similar new altitude. Their apartments are nicer too. Their cars are newer. And without a single explicit conversation about money, a new normal settles over the entire social environment like a slow change in air pressure. None of this feels like losing ground. That's what makes it so elegant a trap. It feels like finally living at the level you always deserved. In 1978, psychologists Philip Brickman and Donald Campbell introduced a concept that has quietly unsettled every assumption about money and satisfaction that preceded it. They studied lottery winners, people who had, seemingly overnight, leapt to the financial horizon most of us spend our lives walking toward. And what they found was this. Within roughly a year, those lottery winners reported nearly identical levels of happiness as they had before winning. The windfall had not moved the needle in any lasting way. The mechanism behind this finding is called hedonic adaptation. The human mind is not built to sustain elevated emotional states. It is built to normalize, to recalibrate, to treat whatever is currently happening as the new unremarkable baseline, and to begin reaching again from there. This is not a flaw. In evolutionary terms, it was essential. An organism that remains permanently euphoric after finding food would stop looking for more food. Adaptation keeps you hungry, which keeps you alive. But it creates a specific and painful irony when applied to income. Every upgrade you make gets absorbed. The nicer apartment becomes just where you live. The better car becomes just your car. The elevated social environment becomes just your life. And the emotional lift, the sense of arrival, the feeling of that Tuesday afternoon in the conference room. It fades. Not completely, not forever. But it recedes back toward wherever you started, and the only way to restore it is to upgrade again. This is the treadmill that nobody sells you a ticket to, and yet nearly everyone rides. But hedonic adaptation isn't working alone. There's a second mechanism, and it may be more powerful because it's externally driven rather than internal. The psychologist Leon Festinger first articulated it in 1954. We evaluate our own standing not against some absolute standard, but against the people around us. This is social comparison theory, and at moderate intensities, it's simply how human beings make sense of where they are. But income growth has a specific way of warping it. When your income rises, your reference group tends to rise with it. The people you compare yourself to, not always consciously, often invisibly, are now operating at a higher level. And so the new income, which felt like abundance relative to where you were, begins to feel like adequacy or even mild scarcity, relative to where you now find yourself socially located. The colleague who just bought a house. The friend who took a business class flight. The dinner where everyone ordered without looking at the prices and you looked at the prices. These moments recalibrate the compass. And the compass now points toward a more expensive north. There is a third force completing this triad, and it is perhaps the least discussed. As income grows, spending stops being purely about comfort or convenience and starts being about identity. The brands chosen, the neighborhood selected, the way the home is furnished. These become expressions of who you are, or more precisely, who you have decided you are now. Researchers call this identity-based spending, and it is exceptionally resistant to change precisely because changing it would feel like a statement about self, not just a line in a budget. To downgrade the apartment is to say you are the kind of person who lives in a cheaper apartment. To cancel the wine club is to step back from the version of yourself that belongs to it. These aren't financial decisions anymore. They're existential ones. And that is exactly why they almost never get made. Consider two people. They are 30 years old, both earning the same salary, both receiving the same raise. A 20% increase that takes them from $80,000 a year to $96,000. The first person, call him Marcus, does what feels natural. He moves to a better apartment. He upgrades his car. His lifestyle expands proportionally with his income. Every few years, as raises continue to come, the same pattern repeats. The spending grows to meet the earning. He lives well. He is not reckless. He is, by most visible measures, successful. The second person, call her Elena, makes a different choice. Not a flashy one. Not a difficult one, exactly, but one that requires resisting a powerful and socially reinforced pull. She keeps her lifestyle where it is. The apartment stays the same. The car runs until it doesn't anymore. And the difference between what she earns and what she spends, that gap, gets directed somewhere specific. Into index funds. Into a retirement account. Into ownership. 20 years pass. Marcus has lived more visibly. His homes have been nicer. His vacations more frequent. His wardrobe more considered. By external appearances, he has done well. But his net worth at 50 has not kept pace with his income growth. Every raise got absorbed. Every bonus found a destination. His lifestyle has required his income to remain exactly where it is or grow. He has no room to stop. He is in the most precise financial sense, not free. Elena's numbers tell a different story. The gap she maintained, even a modest one, 15 to 20% of each raise redirected rather than spent, compounded over 2 decades into something qualitatively different from a savings account. At a conservative average annual return of 7%, $30,000 invested at 30 becomes roughly $116,000 by 50. But she didn't invest $30,000 once. She redirected a portion of every raise, every bonus, every year. The compounding isn't linear. It accelerates. By 50, Elena has options that exist on a different plane entirely. She can reduce her hours. She can take a lower-paying role she actually wants. She can weather a job loss without the cold panic that Marcus would feel within 3 months of losing his income. The difference between their lives isn't income. It's the same income. The difference is the distance they each maintained between what came in and what went out, and what they did with that distance. Income growth and wealth growth are not the same process. Income is a rate. Wealth is a state. And you can run a very high rate for a very long time and end up with a very low state, because rates without capture are just flow. Water through cupped hands. The raise changed the flow. It didn't change the hands. Most people understand this intellectually. They can nod at the logic of it over a podcast. But intellectual understanding doesn't resist the Saturday afternoon walk through the furniture store, or the conversation with a friend who just described their renovated kitchen, or the quiet internal voice that says you've earned this, you work hard, you deserve to live like it. And here's where the psychology becomes genuinely interesting. Because that voice isn't wrong, exactly. You did earn it. You do work hard. The error isn't in the premise. The error is in what living like it is assumed to mean. Somewhere in the formation of the modern professional identity, living well became synonymous with spending well. Visible consumption became the primary language of success, and any alternative. Choosing not to upgrade, choosing to maintain, choosing to let the raise quietly compound rather than loudly arrive, reads as failure to claim what you've earned, or worse, as an admission that you don't quite believe you belong at the new level. But freedom doesn't photograph well. Ownership doesn't show up in a dining room. A brokerage account doesn't communicate status at a dinner party. These things are silent, invisible, and they compound in the dark while the visible things depreciate in the light. The cruelest part of this entire dynamic is what happens to expectations. As income rises, so does the threshold at which others perceive you as doing fine. Family members who once admired your apartment now assume you've upgraded. Friends who once split the cheaper bottle now order without negotiating. Professional peers operating at your new income level carry their own assumptions about how someone at that level lives. The income increase didn't just change your finances. It changed the social contract around you. And so even if you wanted to live below the new income, even if you had the self-awareness and the discipline to resist the upgrades, you would face a second challenge: the expectations of everyone who has recalibrated around your new number. The pressure isn't just internal anymore. It's ambient. This is the invisible tax on rising income that no financial spreadsheet accounts for. Not money exactly, but something that costs money to satisfy. The maintenance of a social position that the raise helped create and that the raise now partially funds. So what changes? Not the math. You already knew the math. Not the advice, which has been the same for decades. What changes, if anything changes, is the moment of interpretation. The raise lands. The excitement is real. The validation is earned. And in that moment, before the apartment search begins, before the car payment gets rationalized, before the reference group reshapes around you, there is a brief window where the decision isn't yet made. That window is where the question lies. Not how much can I now spend, but what does this actually give me the ability to build? Because a raise is not a signal to upgrade your life. It is a transfer of capacity. It is the organization giving you more leverage. And leverage, in the financial sense, is only useful if it's applied to something that grows. Spending the raise is releasing the leverage the moment it arrives. Investing the raise is the act of someone who understands that the point was never the new apartment. The point was the accumulation of options. The slow, quiet construction of a life that does not require you to keep running at exactly this speed forever, without rest, without choice, without the ability to stop. The raise didn't make you poorer, but the story you told yourself about what to do with it might have. And the only thing harder than not telling that story is recognizing, mid-sentence, that you've been telling it for years.
Bye! Subscribe and like the video.